A pleasure, it's me all at last, and welcome back once again to HJN Season 5. So when it comes to franchises, whether it be pop culture or anything else, we do have plenty more to talk about. So in that regard, we'll just go on ahead and bring ourselves to 2940, which will be specifically going into detail about a franchise called Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So, as funny as the title itself sounds, it's a bit more intriguing when you actually get to explore this franchise. This is actually a case in which that it's well known as a book series, because as of today, there's dozens of them. But it goes all the way back to 2006. Yeah, that's right. This series of books, which were made possible by author Jeff Kinney, has been going on for 20 years. Some of the latest installments, of course, will include Party Pooper, No Brainer, and of course, plenty of other notable titles. They do have some pretty good creativity when it comes to the titles. They make them sound catchy and want people to buy them. Even more impressive is the kind of artwork they have, with an image of typically Greg Heffley being pictured on the front cover, and the covers are usually hardback, so that way they can be pretty easy to stow and also pretty hard to damage. So the thing is, though, is that while this series has been going on for 20 years as a book series, they actually have expanded out into various forms of media. Most importantly, in the film industry. Because starting in 2010, a series of live-action films starring the likes of Devin Bostic, Steve Zahn, and many others would start coming around, centering around in the books, at first taking place with the first book, which at the time came out 4 years prior, as the first film was released in 2010, and it gave us the unique storyline of Greg Heffley going into his first days of middle school and carrying on through the rest of the year with his best friend Raleigh, his not-so-good brother known as Manny and Roderick, and of course, his mom and dad. That while the first film actually did a really good job, in many ways, they would bring along a sequel 2 years later, centering around the second book, Roderick Rules. There unfortunately wasn't a film based on The Last Straw, which was the third book in the series, although there was a film that centered around Dog Days, which was number 4 in the book series. A few years later, though, they would eventually make a movie about The Long Haul, which at the time was a book that was published in 2014, a few years before. So much like with the first two films, we have The Long Haul, which was released in 2017, and while this was a little while after the likes of the other films, the most important thing to remember here is that this was basically when they jumped from Dog Days all the way to The Long Haul, because there were a number of other books that came around. Hard Luck, Cabin Fever, The Ugly Truth. They basically skimmed over a lot of the other books and went straight for The Long Haul. And I'll admit that The Long Haul is a personal favorite of mine. In fact, if I had to do a top 5 list of my own favorite Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, because I do pretty much have a majority of the entire collection with me at the moment. But the thing is, though, if I had to pick 5 favorites of mine, they're not exactly in any particular order because there's just so many great picks to have out there. Then I will have to say Old School would be 1 out of 5. Long Haul would be part of the 5 as well. I also get the feeling that with The Deep End, as well as Party Pooper, and even the original, all the way from 2006, those are mostly just highlights. Ones that I feel like are more of personal recommendations of my own part. But let's also be real here. They couldn't keep up with the live action films for too long. Because believe it or not, when Disney Plus was able to create their own animated versions of the books, they basically centered around much more faithfully to the original book from 2006, and eventually following up with Roderick Rules and The Last Straw, which actually came out not too long ago. The thing is, these animated films from Disney Plus centered around the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books and were actually much more faithful to them compared to the live action films, in which that they took a few liberties here and there. Some notable ways is that they cross-reference to some other books in the franchise, and in other cases, they basically left out certain key segments. Like, I remember Roderick Rules, the live action one, of course, from 2012. They basically skimmed over the part where Rowley stubbed his toe on a dumbbell because of a trick that he did where he would come downstairs and kick a pillow, and then Greg got the idea to injure him because he apparently thought that Rowley kicking a pillow across the room was annoying. Yeah, that was what happened in the book, but that never happened in the movie. In the animated one, though, that we got from Disney Plus, they were able to reenact it. So, like I said, Disney Plus was able to do way more of a faithful, loyal job to the original books compared to what the live action films did. But you know what? That's not to say neither of them are good in any ways. I will say that I did enjoy watching all three of the Disney Plus Diary of a Wimpy Kid films, which were all well animated, all well reprehensible of all the characters, just given a 3D treatment and colorized. So, while it might seem a little weird, it even gives off a bit of Captain Underpants vibe to it, knowing how they did their animation style for that particular film. In any other case, though, Diary of a Wimpy Kid is one of those series that has carried on for such a long time. It's almost on a similar level as to what we saw with SpongeBob, The Simpsons, Family Guy, Transformers, etc. Even though Transformers is a bit different than the bunch because it never stayed on the same continuity for more than 4 years. I mean, that'd be a different story when you think about the fact that, I mean, sure, they could have kept around the G1 characters, and if they were able to continuously bring back the characters and somehow keep the continuity going for 40 years, that'd be a whole different story. But Transformers is one of those franchises that, even though it's still going strong today, they change up the continuity every now and then to refreshen people and, more importantly, refresh the market. So that way, new lines of toys, video games, merchandise of all sorts can be put around there. And speaking of merchandise, there has been some notoriety correlating to Diary of a Wimpy Kid. While there's not exactly much of official merchandising going around, like branded clothes or Halloween costumes or whatnot, there are still plenty of noteworthy outfits that, in the live action films for instance, can be spotted. So that way, some people have gone out and cosplayed as any of the characters from the franchise respectively. In any other case though, Diary of a Wimpy Kid is just something that's going to be around for probably a while, if not forever. So I guess with that in mind, that's all I got to say about this series. There's a lot of books, a lot of time to kill, if you wish to do so. For me though, I will just stick with the books that I got at the moment. I don't need to go very far down the rabbit hole here in terms of lore and whatnot, but I will say, this is a good family that occasionally has a lot of crazy adventures, no matter what they may be. And I guess that pretty much cuts it for today's episode here. But that's not to say that I've run out of franchises. I still got plenty more worth talking about. So, come back tomorrow and I'll have just that waiting for you.